Hi guys, welcome back to First Chapter Fridays. Over the weekend, it occurred to me that I you guys are not in middle school and I am currently in high school, and that means that you guys change related arts every quarter while we change classes every semester. So that means I forgot to do an introduction, and for all of you new people, I am very sorry about that. My name is Eliza Gardenauer. I'm a junior at DB High School. I'm the daughter of Diana Gardenauer, if any of you know her. She is a sixth grade social studies teacher here at Sevier. She moved this year, but she used to teach at Robinson, the school I went to. Um, and I love to read. I love to draw. I I like to sing too, but I'm in band, not chorus. I'm in band. I play clarinet. I've played clarinet for Wow, I played clarinet for 6 years. That's crazy to think. Those of you in band, if you stick with it, you will get to say that you have played an instrument for 7 years. That's crazy. Well, anyway, this week we are going to be reading The Thief Lord by Cornelia Funk, and last week I believe we read Inkheart, which is also by the same author. She is a very famous children's author, and I believe she is from Germany. Yes. And yeah, so we're going to read the synopsis for this. Welcome to the magical underworld of Venice, Italy, where hidden canals and crumbling rooftops shelter runaways and children with incredible secrets. Prosper and Beau are orphans on the run from their cruel aunt and uncle. The brothers decide to hide out in Venice, where they meet a mysterious 13-year-old boy who calls himself the Thief Lord. Brilliant and charismatic, the Thief Lord leads a ring of street children who dabble in petty crimes. Prosper and Beau delight in being part of this colorful new family, but the Thief Lord has secrets of his own, and soon the boys are thrust into circumstances that will lead them and readers into a fantastic, spellbinding conclusion. So, as always, I will read the first chapter of this book. Chapter 1. Victor's New Clients. It was autumn in Venice when Victor first heard of Prosper and Beau. The canals, gleaming in the sun, dappled the ancient brickwork with gold, but the wind was blowing ice-cold air from the sea, reminding the Venetians that winter was approaching. Even the air in the alleyways tasted of snow, and only the wings of the carved angels and dragons high up on the rooftops felt any real warmth from the pale sun. The house in which Victor lived and worked stood close to a canal, oh gosh, stood close to a canal, so close, in fact, that the water lapped against its walls. At night, he sometimes dreamed that the house was sinking into the waves, and that the sea would wash away the causeway that Venice clings to, breaking the thin thread that binds the city to Italy's mainland. In his dream, the sea would sweep the lagoon away too, swallowing everything, the houses, the bridges, the churches, the palaces, and the people who had built so boldly on its surface. For the time being, however, the city still stood firmly on its wooden legs. Victor leaned against his window and looked out through the dusty glass. Surely no other place on earth was more proud of its beauty than Venice, and he watched the spires and domes, each caught the sun as if trying to outshine one another. Whistling a tune, Victor turned away from the window and walked over to his large mirror. Just the weather for trying out his new disguise, he thought, as the sun warmed the back of his sturdy neck. He had bought this new treasure only the previous day, an enormous mustache, so dark and bushy that it would have made any self-respecting walrus extremely jealous. He stuck it carefully under his nose and stood on his toes to make himself taller. He turned to the left, to the right, and became so engrossed in his reflection that he only heard the footsteps on the stairs when they stepped outside his door. Clients! Blast! Why were they bothering him now, all of times? With a deep sigh, he sat behind his desk. He heard the voices whispering outside his door. They were probably admiring his nameplate, Victor thought, a handsome black shiny sign with his name engraved in gold letters. Victor Jetz, Private Detective, Investigations of any kind. It was written in 3 languages after all. He often had clients from abroad. Next to the sign was a knocker, a lion's head with a brass ring in its mouth, which Victor had polished just that morning. What are they waiting for? He thought, tapping his fingers on the armrest of the chair. Avanti! He called out. Come in! The door opened. A man and woman stepped into Victor's office, which also doubled as his living room. They looked around warily, taking in the cacti, the beard and mustache collection, the coat and stand bursting with Victor's caps, hats and wigs, the huge street map of Venice on the wall, and the winged lion that served as a paperweight on Victor's desk. "Do you speak English?" asked the woman, although her Italian sounded quite fluent. "Of course," Victor answered, gesturing towards the chair in front of his desk. "English is my mother tongue. What can I do for you?" They both sat down hesitantly. The man folded his arms and looked rather sullen. The woman stared at Victor's walrus mustache. "Oh, that's just for camouflage," he explained, pulling the mustache from his lips. "Quite a necessity in my line of work. Well, what can I do for you? Anything lost or stolen? Any pet run away?" Without saying a word, the woman reached into her bag. She had ash blonde hair and a pointed nose. Her mouth didn't look as if smiling was its favorite activity. The man was a giant, at least 2 full heads taller than Victor. His nose was peeling from sunburn, and his eyes were small and dull. Doesn't look like he could take a joke either, Victor thought, as he committed the 2 faces to memory. He could never remember a phone number, but he never forgot a face. "This is what we've lost," the woman said as she pushed the photograph across the desk. Her English was even better than her Italian. 2 boys looked at Victor from the photograph. One was small and blond, with a broad smile on his face. The other was older, dark-haired, and more serious-looking. He had his arm around the younger boy's shoulders, as if he wanted to protect him from all that was evil in the world. "Children?" Victor looked up in surprise. "I've tracked down a lot of things in my time. Suitcases, dogs, a couple of escaped lizards, and some husbands. But you are the first clients to come by to me because they've lost their children. Mr. and Mrs. He looked at them inquisitively. "Hartlib," the woman answered. "Esther and Max Hartlib." "And they are not our children," her husband stated firmly, which immediately earned him an angry look from his pointy-nosed wife. "Prosper and Boniface are my late sister's sons," she explained. She raised the boys on her own. Prosper has just turned 12, and Beau is 5. "Prosper and Boniface," murmured Victor. "Unusual names. Doesn't Prosper mean the lucky one?" Esther Hartlib arched her eyebrows. "Does it? Well, one thing's for sure. They're very strange names, and that's putting it mildly. My late sister had a fondness for anything peculiar. When she died 3 months ago, my husband and I applied for custody of Beau, but we sadly don't have any children of our own. But we couldn't possibly have taken on his older brother as well. And a reasonable person could see that. But Prosper got very upset, acting like a lunatic, accusing us of stealing his brother, although we would have allowed him to visit Beau once a month." Her face grew even paler. "They ran away more than 8 weeks ago," Max Hartlib continued, "from their grandfather's house in Hamburg, where they were staying at the time. Prosper's quite capable of talking his brother into any foolish scheme, and everything we have found out so far indicates that he has brought him here, to Venice." "From Hamburg to Venice?" Victor raised his eyebrows. "That's a long way for 2 children to travel on their own. Have you contacted the police here?" "Of course we have," hissed Esther Hartlib. "There were no help at all. Surely it can't be that hard to find 2 children who are all alone." But her husband cut her off. "Sadly, I have to return home on urgent business. We would therefore like to put you in charge of the search for the boys, Mr. Getz. The concierge at our hotel recommended you." "How nice of him," Victor mumbled. He fiddled with the false mustache. The thing looked like a dead mouse lying next to the phone. "But what makes you so sure that they've come to Venice? Surely they didn't just come to ride on gondolas." "It's their mother's fault!" Mrs. Hartlib pursed her lips and glanced out through Victor's dirty window. Outside of the balcony, the wind was ruffling the feathers of a pigeon. "My sister kept telling the boys about this city. She told them stories about winged lions, a golden cathedral, and about angels and dragons that perched on top of the buildings. She told them that water nymphs came ashore for walks at night up the little steps on the edges of the canals." She shook her head angrily. "My sister could talk about these things in a way that she almost made me believe her. It was Venice this, Venice that, nothing but Venice. Beau drew winged lions all the time, and Prosper simply drank in every word his mother said. He probably thought that if they could make it to Venice, he and Bo would land right in the middle of fairyland. What an idea! She wrinkled her nose and cast a contemptuous look through the window at the crumbling plaster of the neighboring houses. Mr. Hartleb adjusted his tie. "It has cost us a lot of money to trace the boys this far, Mr. Getz," he said, "and I can assure you that they are here somewhere." "In this filth!" Miss Hartleb finished her husband's sentence for him. "Well, at least they aren't if any cars here to run them over," Victor said under his breath. He looked up at the street map on his wall and stared at the maze of lanes and canals that made Venice so unique. Then turning back to look at his desk, deep in thought, he started scratching doodles onto its surface with his letter opener. Mr. Hartleb cleared his throat. "Mr. Getz, will you take the case on?" Victor looked once more at the photograph of the two very different faces, the tall, serious boy, and the carefree smile of the younger one, and then he nodded. "Yes, I'll take it," he said. "I will find them. They look a little too young to be coping on their own. Tell me, did you ever run away as children?" "For heaven's sake, of course I didn't!" Esther Hartleb looked flabbergasted. Her husband just shook his head as if it was the strangest thing he'd ever heard. "Well, I did." Victor wedged the photograph under the winged lion. "But I was by myself. I didn't have a big or small. I didn't have a brother, big or small, to look after me." "Well, leave me your address and telephone number, and let's talk about my fee." As the Hartlebs struggled back down the narrow staircase, Victor stepped onto the balcony. A cold wind whipped at his face, bearing the salty tang of the nearby sea. Shivering, he leaned against the balustrade and watched the Hartlebs step onto a bridge a few houses further down the canal. It was a pretty bridge, but the couple seemed not to take any notice of it. They rushed across it sullenly, without even a glance at the scrawny dog barking at them from the passage barge. And of course they didn't spit into the canal, like Victor always did. "Well, who says you have to like your clients?" the detective muttered to himself. He leaned over a cardboard box on the floor of the balcony, out of which the heads of two tortoises were peeking. Parents like that are still parents, better than no parents at all, right? What do you think? Don't tortoises have parents? Victor looked through the balustrade at the canal below, and at the houses, whose stony feet were washed away by the water day in and day out. He had lived in Venice for more than 15 years, and he still didn't know that all the city's nooks and crannies. But then again, no one did. The job wouldn't be easy, particularly if the boys didn't want to be found. There were so many hidden places, so many narrow alleys, with names that no one could remember, some of them with no names at all. Boarded up churches, deserted houses, the whole city was one huge invitation to play hide and seek. "Well, I've always liked playing hide and seek," thought Victor, "and so far I've found everyone I've ever looked for." The two boys had already been coping alone for 8 weeks. 8 weeks! When he had run away from home, he had only managed to cope with his freedom for one afternoon. At dusk he had slunk back home, feeling sad and sorry for himself. The tortoises nibbled at the lettuce leaf Victor was holding out to them. "I think I'd better take you inside tonight," he said. "This wind tastes of winter." Lando and Paula looked at him through their lashless eyes. He sometimes got them mixed up, but they didn't seem to mind. He had found them one day at the fish market, where he had gone in search of a client's Persian cat. Once Victor had managed to fish the pedigreed cat out of a barrel full of stinking sardines and stowed her into a scratch-safe box, he discovered the two tortoises. They had been meandering through all the human feet, completely oblivious to the world. When Victor picked them up they quickly retreated into their shells. "Where shall I start?" Victor wondered. "In the orphanages? In the hospitals? They're such sad places. But maybe I don't need to begin there. The Hartlebs have probably done that already." He leaned over the balcony and spat into the dark canal. Bo and Prosper. Nice names, he thought, even if they are a little unusual.